What's up, friends? Welcome back to the show. Today, I had a fascinating conversation with mover and coach, Mr. Bam Lionheart. His goal is to help you reclaim your freedom through the lens and practice of movement, but not just any old movement, primal movement to be exact. So, what does that mean? Well, something like getting back to a more natural way of living, thinking, and doing this thing that we call movement. So expect to learn the basics of what most people get wrong today due to the challenges of modern living. Why spending more time on the ground is your ultimate teacher. Learning how to crawl again can help you walk again, look better, feel better, and why Bam hates the barbell. This is a fun one packed with lots of actionable information, as well as a really cool philosophy on how to approach movement for optimal health, longevity, and fun. So, without further ado, let's get into the show for the movers and groovers. Welcome to the show, Bam. You're looking quite like the Primal man today, outside, luscious blonde locks flowing in the Florida breeze. Primal as it gets, my dude. What is the whole primal philosophy about to you? I know you talk a lot about primal movement, but I imagine it extends into a lot more other reachings of your life. So, a big question to start with, but what's this whole primal moniker about and what does it mean to you?
Thank you for having me on. By the way, primal. When people hear primal, they do tend to think like, oh yeah, like a guy, like carnivore. I'm eating meat and just caveman. It gets really extreme, but primal in its like definition really means essential or foundational,
Hmm.
and that idea, the essential or foundational piece, is what I'm looking for in my life and for my work, which is what does it mean to be a human? What is the natural way to be a human? And how can I support that? And how can I uncover that? I think for most of us, we feel that there's something about modern life that is just a little bit, a couple clicks far away from the natural way. And when we go farther away from that, some bad things happen. We get some really good things. You get iPhone technologies, we get the ability to interface on a podcast in different parts of the world, but we also there's some drawbacks to that. So with Primal is like really just answering the question for myself, and I encourage everyone to answer this or to seek an answer for themselves: is what is the most natural way for me to be, and what does that mean to uh, take ownership of my primal nature, recognizing that I am nature, I'm part of nature, and I am as much an animal as I am a human. And just like we have our dogs and our cats or horses, like we honor that this is a horse and a horse should be treated, fed, and cared for in a certain way because by its design it is a horse, or a dog or a cat. We treat these animals as individuals based upon who they are. And humans, for us, we are a human animal, but oftentimes we like to forget that we are part of nature and think that we are maybe above it all. But by honoring our primal nature, by asking these questions and looking into that, we can start to come closer to who we are, the actual physical nature of our being, and ultimately for the goal to support it, to nurture it, so that we can live a really healthy and strong life.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. You know, we've been conversating a bit offline leading up to this, and you've probably seen my username that I chose Peak Primal Health, and that primal is wedded into me too. And it became a lot of exactly what you just said, this trying to square the circle of modernity with the ancient lost ways. That in some of what we've lost or forgotten, that there is some real value there, some sense of belonging, probably a lot more health, because it doesn't seem like our ancestors probably suffered with many of the ailments of modernity that we do today, whether that's from the movement perspective or the chronic disease perspective. But also, like you said, some great things from modernity too. Like we don't have to hunt and gather all of our food now. We have air conditioning if you live in Florida. We have heating if you live in Tennessee. Like these are cool things, but too much domestication of the animal makes it sick. And that is why I was drawn to something more like a primal kind of approach in this idea. I'm curious where that started for you. Did you always have that, or was there like a waking up moment of like, wait a minute, what the heck are we doing here? Can you pinpoint that?
Yeah, it came from there are people like intelligence. Some people are gifted with a mathematical intelligence or musical intelligence, verbal, emotional intelligence. One of the intelligence is kinesthetic intelligence, physical intelligence, which means that you're very tapped into the sensations of your body,
Mm.
and like interacting and interfacing with your world based on your physicality. Some people will call this being an athlete or just someone who's like embodied within their body. Not everyone is from the get-go has this intelligence. You can develop it just like mathematics or music. All these things can be developed, but there are definitely some people that are born with that. I believe that I was born with a strong kinesthetic intelligence and awareness of what made my body feel really good and what made my body not feel good. And so, for instance, when I was younger, like most children, I did not enjoy wearing shoes.
Hmm.
I wanted to be barefoot all the time because that made me feel the best. It made me my movement feel good. It made me feel like I loved the feeling of running outside, even the feeling of the grass on my feet, or even concrete. Like I preferred that to like wearing a sock and then a shoe. It just felt so cumbersome. It didn't feel good. It took time to put it on and take it off, and so naturally I'm barefoot all the time. But then as you develop, then you're like, okay, well, bam, we're at school, so you have to put on your shoes, and it's like, well, why do I have to put on my shoes? And so like, wait, why do I have to do this? I'm getting this instinct from my body that says, take your shirt off, go outside, or take your shoes off. And then you're telling me that this is not okay. And so immediately from when I was younger, I was asking these questions of why, because I'm getting such a strong signal from my body to do something that feels good, that feels natural. And then the rest of the world is telling me something different.
Mm.
And so I'm not sure who to listen to. And a lot of people are just told, hey, stop listening to your instincts, stop listening to what your body is saying, and just do what everyone else is doing. Um, I'm really grateful that I'm kind of like a rebel person, and I need to know why, and it needs to make sense for me. And it never made sense to me of why I needed to wear shoes if I didn't want to wear shoes, or even something like putting a shirt on type of thing,
Mm.
because kinesthetic, I could feel the sun on my skin. I could feel how that made me feel, my energy, my vitality, and I was like, I don't want to interrupt that interface with the world. I don't want to interrupt the interface with my feet. And so there's so many more of those, but it started at an early age of
Mm.
being told what to do, whether it was you need to sit in the chair, you need to put the shoes on, you need to put a t-shirt on. For a lot of people, this feels superfluous, like like hey, just kind of go with the program. But to me, this is like deeply concerning to my life.
Hmm.
It's like, why is this hard? And so asking these questions and looking at why do I feel a certain way, and then why are people telling me to disregard my instincts, um, can you lead down a rabbit hole into exactly what you're looking at, what I'm also trying to get to, which is what is the natural way and why do we
Yeah.
want to do these things? Why do
Yeah.
why do kids take off their clothes? Why do they wanna be barefoot running around? Why do they wanna be outside? Why do they not wanna sit in the chair? Is
Yeah.
that just because you're a kid, or is it because there's a natural innate intelligence of the human body that is speaking to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reliving this right now vicariously through my children, 5 and 1, and they're feral, wild little animals that are more in touch with the natural order of things. Like good luck trying to keep shoes on these kids.
Yeah,
I mean, they will for all of the weird societal reasons that you just said. Like, we're going into the store, you're going to walk around, put shoes on. But even still, there feels like there is a betrayal of one's own kind of sovereignty when you do that, because I've had the same conundrums in my own internal battles with this. Like, why? It
yeah,
feels good, and feeling is believing, right? So like when you feel something and then culture tells you, oh no, you can't do that because it's quote unquote a bad thing, you're right. What then happens is kind of like a progressive head death of outsourcing your locus of authority. You hand over to whoever it is, and I do think that starts at a very young age. It starts in school with the teachers, right? Hey, you feel this way, that's cute, shut up, sit in rows, listen to me, I'm the expert. And then you just kind of graduate through higher levels of education, and then you become an adult, whatever that means, and now you're listening to doctors and
yeah,
PhDs instead of self inquiry. And I had a teacher tell me, a few years ago, don't ignore when the body speaks for what the mind thinks. And I
mm,
think you just articulated that's what you were feeling, the body speaking to you, like, hey, this feels good. When I move this way, it feels good. When I live this way, it feels good. But the mind thinking or not thinking, because you were told very young to not think, because that's a dangerous thing, you just kind of stop doing it. And then you end up with this knowing sense of, why do I feel off? Or why is my body manifesting in pain? Or why do I have disease or dis-ease in my body? And maybe it's from a life of chronically suppressing those little nudges of a more wild, natural way, which can get you into all sorts of trouble because being a rebel will in today's world, but it can also lead you to the path of just feeling free, free in your body, free in your mind.
Yeah.
What's that like for you today? And what are some other maybe pivotal moments along that journey as how you've come to look at freedom through movement and expression and living?
You know, when you said that is like, oh, hey, if you really follow your instincts, if you really allow your body to help direct the path of your life, you can get into trouble. That is a seed that is planted in us, and to me, I think it's absolute BS. It's
Right.
from a fear based approach that there is this animal beast inside of us with these beastly urges, but then there is this knowing, rational, aware human, and you want the human to be in full control, and you want to suppress and control the beast because if you don't, then it's going to lead you down a dark path. And I think that that is people will get into that mode. It's a life of fear. It's a life of I'm afraid of my nature. I'm afraid of my
Right.
instincts. I don't trust my instincts. And what that tells me and what I've seen in other people is you don't trust your body. And if you don't trust your body, how can your body trust you and what you want to
Mm,
do? And so now you're living with this you're not in alignment with your actual self, with your actual you. And the opposite of that, which is my favorite, which is what I do for my work as a movement coach with my clients and what I'm promoting online is to trust that your body wants the absolute best for you.
mm,
That your body shows up for you every single day. It heals you, it nurtures you, it creates energy for you, it breathes for you. It does all of these things to support your life so that you as the human can say, "Today I'd like to go surfing." Well, then your body is the vehicle, is the thing that allows you to go experience that. And it wants to
mm,
surf with you as much as you do. It also wants you to be healthy, probably just as much as you do. There's no moment in your life when your body says, I'm tired, I'm going to take a day off from like showing up 100%. And so acknowledging that my body is in full support of me, whether I like it or not, it is there for me, it will show up for me, and it wants the best for me. That means that my instincts are the direct line of communication to my body. When my body needs support, it says, hey, we're a little bit dehydrated. Can we get some liquids? That is my body requesting for help. And if I don't hear that communication, if I'm not able to listen to that, or if I'm like, well, I know that I'm a little bit dehydrated, my body's asking to be quenched with thirst, or that fruit looks really yummy right now, but I've got this work that I need to go do, or we're driving
mm,
here, like I can't stop. There's life that needs to be lived, so I'm not going to trust those instincts. So the opposite of this fear, more control my instincts, control the inner beast, is trusting that my inner knowing body, my body, is actually um, very highly intelligent and it should be listened to. And when I listen to it, all of the things that I actually want are given to me. And that produces a sense of freedom and a sense of joy because my body and myself are now on the same team and we're
mm,
helping each other. And I'm listening to my body and I'm responding to it. And when my body says, "Hey, I'm looking for some sustenance, like some protein," and I go out and I say, "I hear you. I'm gonna go get some protein right now," despite whatever. Oh, I've got to post this thing on Instagram. I got to do this email. I got to. No, no, no. My body's saying I'm hungry, so I go and I go forward and respond to that communication. Then that reestablishes trust with my body.
mm,
And that trust establishes that connection, that communication of my instincts and my sensations to be even stronger. And so now I know more. I'm able to talk to my body. And the more that I take those little baby steps of going to bed when my body wants to go to bed, taking a nap, drinking water, or hydrating myself when my body wants to be hydrated, laying in the sun when my body wants to do that. It's like any relationship that we have in the world, it's an opportunity to establish trust. And
mm.
moving through your life when you and your body like trust each other and are on the same team, like makes you feel like a superman or a superwoman. And from that feeling emanates this like, we can do anything. We together can move mountains. We can go learn how to surf. We can go heal our body. We can go create this lifestyle that I want, because it's not just me and my little
Mm,
brain in charge, but it's also this deep body of mine that is more knowing and more intelligent than I could ever fathom. And as long as I am willing to listen and respond to it and support its mechanisms, everything that I will ever want to do with my life will be kind of there for me. And that just creates ultimately this feeling of like freedom and joy,
right.
that comes really interestingly from service to my body as opposed to control. I need to
Mm.
control it. I need to control it. I need to control it. I need to I need to hack into it. I need to go into this mainframe and like hack it and control it and suppress it. No, 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 no. It's the opposite. Is I trust my body that it wants the best, and my instincts are only going to lead me to good places.
I like that a lot, man. I think it's a very refreshing reframe because I do think a lot of people are at war with the bodies, right? Whether they're biohacking mad, all in the nature, it's like well intentioned because they're gonna whatever live to 150. Or the people that are at war with the body because they feel like it's ugly and they say mean things to it or it hurts, and maybe that's one of the things that has broken that trust that you've talked about. But I really like that frame as well, that you said like your body is the vehicle that allows you more experiences if you have this intimate relationship with it, to adventure, to go surf, whatever that is. I've often felt like, whatever we are deep within our bodies, whether it's a soul or consciousness, our experiences are limited through the vehicle that we're in, right? You can drive, pick whatever fancy car you want to say. You can drive a Porsche GT3 and have all the fun in the world, or you can drive a decrepit thing with 200,000 miles on it that's got really dirty smoke in it and not really experience that much. So your body is your vehicle for life, and the more experiences you can have, the more you can learn, the more your soul or your consciousness can expand and grow. So I think that's something that's really helped me reframe my relationship to my body and helped me build trust with my body. I hadn't really thought about it in that way until you just said it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you think is the why do so many people not trust their body, do you think?
Well, I think I love this analogy, and I use it quite a bit with clients or communication, or even with myself. This analogy of the car, like your body is the car, and as humans, we have a very interesting predicament where we are both the car, like we acknowledge and we identify with our body as ourself.
Yeah.
So we are both the car, and we are also the driver. So in like a car that's like racing, there's the car and then there's the driver. And when you are the car, if the car breaks down, you have a problem. There's a problem with you. And that's when bad self-talk can happen. It's like I really identify with my vehicle as like me. Um, and I encourage people to step actually into the driver's seat. The driver of the car is very objective and not so judgmental type of thing. That's the driver has a very special role where he gets to drive and feel. I know the direction I want to go. I know the quality I want to go, and so I'm making these movements and I'm operating the vehicle. I'm operating my body. And when something doesn't work or something doesn't respond, like you're talking about, you're driving this old vehicle that maybe doesn't have power steering. You're like, man, I really got to
Mm,
crank this thing. Most drivers don't go immediately into the headspace of like, oh, this car is so terrible and this power stealing. You're simply just acknowledging, wow, it's taking a lot of force for me to steer this thing. Or, the suspension is a little bit wobbling, the ride is a little bit not ideal. So when you put yourself in the driver's seat, then you start to just objectively look at the quality and the sensations of the vehicle. And then you can say, well, this quality or sensation is less than ideal, and I would like it to be something else. So, for instance, the suspension. Okay, the ride is a little bit wobbly and a little bit crazy. So you're like, that's less than ideal. I don't really enjoy that experience as the driver. I would like a better suspension.
mm,
Then that leads you to say, how can I make the suspension better for my car? And we could easily transfer this to your physical body. If you're walking or running and you're like feel off balance. You don't feel like when you're walking or you're running that you feel balanced, you feel powerful. Maybe it's like you feel clunky when you're doing those movements. A lot of people can resonate. I can resonate with that. So if you identify with yourself as the clunkiness, then you're like, "Oh, I'm clunky. I'm
Mm,
this." Instead, if we say like, "Wow, I'm experiencing walking and running right now. It's feeling off balance. It's feeling a little bit clunky. It's less than ideal. What can I do to make my walking, my running feel a little bit more smooth, balanced, ease, and enjoyable?" Now you're starting to look out in the world for solutions rather than like just judging and
yeah.
saying, this is how it is. So, those two perspectives, we constantly go in and out of I'm operating the vehicle and then I am the vehicle. And you're kind of
Hmm.
with your kind of locus of awareness doing those two different things. And there's a time to put yourself in the driver's seat, and then there's a time to kind of be the actual physical vehicle body of yourself. Does that
Oh,
resonate?
yeah, you're speaking my language, man. I think it makes total sense. And I think that for the kind of listener that listens to this show, I think they are, shout out to you all, radical humans, a little bit more self introspective, a little bit more able to disassociate from knowing or feeling like they are the car, as opposed to, oh, these are maybe parts in the chassis that need fixing. But I think a lot of the time, the same bad trip for all of us is that we quickly do self-identify with the car, right? And like you said, I am clunky, instead of like, oh, this is a clunky thing that I could fix. And that is why I think that many people, like, if the body is in pain, it narrows the bandwidth of consciousness. They only see pain. Like, it's often said, we don't see the world as it is, but as we are. So if our body is tight and disorganized, we kind of see tightness and disorganization in the world.
Mhm.
If we're in pain, we see pain. So it's really interesting because my movement journey has been one of like opening up a lot. I was never gifted from a movement perspective. I was always like a semi decent athlete, but my mobility was trash. And I think back in those days when I was tight, my mindset was narrower and tighter. And these days when I'm looser and I'm more flowy, I actually experience more flow psychologically as well. So I think there's so many ways of looking at this, but it's a really powerful reminder that sometimes the best ways to model changes in the psyche is through the body and vice versa, because they're an interconnected loop, and at the same time you are not your body. So it's a bit of a mind fuck sometimes, but it's a
Yeah.
really refreshing thing to play with.
Yes. And ultimately empowering to say, right now it's helpful for me to put myself in the mind frame of the objective driver who's just
Yeah.
witnessing the body, or at times it's really helpful for me to put myself in, I am the body. This is kind of who I am. But I love what you said, that the physical body is such a beautiful medium and doorway to affect change in our overall quality of life.
Yeah.
And Moshe Feldenkrais has one of my favorite quotes, which is, when you increase your quality of movement, you directly increase your quality of life. So
Yeah.
just by making the quality of movement better, your quality of life increases. It's free, you can do it at any time, and it's a lifelong pursuit. But it makes sense if we go back to the driving analogy. If your quality of driving, if your the car itself is better at driving, it's more a smoother ride, there's more torque for you to
Mm,
utilize, there's more efficiency, that experience of you driving is only going to get better as the vehicle also gets better, and as the driver's ability to drive gets better. Like,
hmm.
when those things increase, just the entire experience gets better. And I don't really know any human being right now who doesn't want to improve their experience and quality of life right now.
That's
It's
right.
just most people don't understand that there's a very easy way to do that, which is through your movement, through your physical being, and through the quality and the sensations of how you interact with the world, through your movement, through your physicality.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. So how do we do that from, the ground level up? What are either some of the biggest mistakes that you see as a movement coach, or just some of the more kind of global problems that people face today because of whether it's modern sitting patterns or just the modern, where do you start? What are you looking for? And how can people improve their quality of life through improving the quality of their movement?
Hmm. There's two parts to this, like just a double-sided coin. So one part is ruthlessly removing from your life as much as possible environments, hobbies, or patterns that reduce your amount of movement. And a really good one is like just looking at your total lifestyle. Like often I do this with parents with their children, and I say, okay, when your kids wake up, what do they do? Most of the time they go to the table and they have breakfast. Okay, so they're sitting at the table and their actions are just with their hands, like eating. So they're sitting at the table eating breakfast, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. Then what's next? Okay, next we usually get in the car and then we carpool or we travel to school. Okay, so now you're sitting in a car seat. Got it. So that's like, again, 20, 30, maybe an hour car ride. And then you go to school. What are you doing in school? Most of the time you're sitting in a chair listening for however many hours, 6, 8 hours. After school, then what are you doing? Maybe you're playing sports, maybe you're doing something, but otherwise you're eventually going to get back in the car, travel back to home. Okay, what happens when you're back at home? Well, once we're back at home, then, well, we're going to have dinner again. So you're going to go right back to that dinner table and you're going to sit again. Okay, what happens after dinner? The family winds down with TV time on the couch, sitting on the couch, or they like to go in their room, play video games on the computer, and they're sitting down on the computer. So if you take this macro lens of your life and look at the movement of your lifestyle, which would be very different to, you said you were like on a homestead. Like imagine that you're outside, maybe doing
Yeah.
some gardening, maybe taking care of some animals. That's a radically different movement than opposed to like sitting down in front of a computer working or going to school. So if you look at the macro lens of your life and you're saying, what are the things that are stopping my movement? The easiest one is your sedentary behavior, your chair sitting, and saying, how much chair sitting am I doing? How much of that is optional, is voluntary, and how much of that is required of me?
Mm.
And then take the ruthless knife and say, the things that are optional, the things that I'm voluntarily removing the amount of movement in my life, I'm going to exit out and I'm going to choose to do movement instead. Like, for instance, this is a podcast. I could be potentially walking and holding my phone, but instead, I'd enjoy to do this podcast in more of a sedentary position. But instead of sitting on a chair, I'm going to sit on the ground. And so throughout this podcast, you'll see me every 2, 3 minutes change positions. And so there's this low level of movement that happens, almost looks like you're standing right now. So
Yep.
same thing with standing. There's like shifting and adjustments, way different than sitting in a chair. So taking the ruthless knife to the places in your life, the hobbies, the habits that just remove or reduce the amount of movement. That's the first big one that's gonna, you don't have to really change anything. Like you don't have to start a new program. You don't have to do anything big. You're just trying to remove the things that you do that eliminate your access to movement. And then the second one would be increasing the amount of time that you have of intentional movement with your body. And it's really important that this is intentional movement, that you are engaging in a movement practice that is very intentional. For some people, it needs to be task oriented, like I'm going surfing, I'm playing golf, or I'm gardening, something that is like I'm doing something, but we're bringing this, my physical body, I need to pay attention to this. Martial arts is probably the biggest example of this. If you're not paying attention in a fight, it doesn't end up well. So
Yeah.
this is why as you go deeper into the martial art world, you bring more intention and more awareness to the technical, minute movements of your body, technique they call it. But you don't need to necessarily do martial arts. It could be more of a yoga-based type of practice, or it could be something that I teach, so like more on like the primal movements. Like we're getting into ground-based movements, crawling, basics of squatting and hinging. But all of these basic movements, but it has to have this layer of intentionality and a deep awareness of paying attention to the sensations of your body. When you pay attention to the sensations, then you have the opportunity to make adjustments to your technique, adjustments to your internal pressuring systems of your body, adjustments to the amount of force or tension that you're creating, even going on a walk or a run, and paying attention like a meditation. What is the quality of my steps, the stride length that I have? How many steps am I taking? How many breaths am I taking while I'm walking? There's an infinite amount of things that you can pay attention to
Mm.
in your walking. And when you pay attention, then you can, as the driver, say, okay, this is the sensation that I'm feeling right now. Is this a really yummy sensation? What I call a green light sensation, like you like it? Or what red light sensations are coming up? What sensations are coming up that are a little bit uncomfortable? Okay, I'm
Mm.
walking right now and my hips are a little bit pinching, or I'm feeling like my shoulders are a little bit tight. you know, and then you start to ask yourself, okay, that's a red light sensation, something that's less than ideal. What can I do to change this red light sensation to a green one? And in that entire process that I kind of just outlined, what you're doing is simply improving the quality of your movement. Just like a musician who's stroking a chord or playing something
Yeah.
says, how is it? Can I make this better?
Hmm.
And if you engage in that process again and again and again and again, eventually the quality of the music that you're playing is really good and super enjoyable. But if you just simply pick up the guitar and just go through the steps, okay, if I go, it's this, and you're not really paying attention, you're just checking the box, I'm just following the
Yeah.
program, I'm just doing what my coach said, my music coach said, you're not engaging with it. And you don't really have the ability to really deeply affect the quality, the tone, the texture of these of these things. We understand it from a musical perspective. Um, it's my favorite and my joy, my pleasure, my honor in this life to bring people's awareness to how our body conducts the symphony of movement,
Mm.
just like people do with music. We do with everything from even how do I raise my hand,
Yeah.
how do I look to the left, how do I take a step, and those small movements that you will do from now until the rest of your life, you can make those masterful, like
Mm.
high quality things. Just like when you hear high quality music, your life is 10 times better because you have the music that you love. What if the movement that you did, you were like, I love when I reach down and I pick up my keys, or I grab my phone, or I pick up my kid? That sensation of that movement brings me so many good sensations rather than, "Ugh, I gotta do this." You know, that to me is just like loud music in the background that nobody really enjoys. It's not this
Yeah.
this conducting of a beautiful kind of string of movement.
Well, you know what? I think you could make a compelling case to say that the coolest instrument we have is the body, and learning to play the body and learning to play the instrument of the nervous system too. Upregulate, downregulate. Like, what an amazing, crazy, complex instrument that is.
Yeah,
And yeah, you can fine tune it. Yeah, you can abuse it too. That thing can be all tight and out of whack, and your D string is tuned to a B, and it sounds kind of weird when you play that chord. Or you can make it awesome. And I think that's something that I've really fallen in love with as a quote unquote mover over the past however long I've been in this game, like 10 years, just really falling in love with movement for movement's sake. Intentional is the word that you use, which I really liked. And
yeah,
I appreciated that you kind of took us through your philosophy of why you took this call sitting down. And one of the things I've said for a long time, maybe showing my age here because I don't think this exists anymore, but Rosetta Stone used to be the way that people would learn new languages. And I'd call the floor the Rosetta Stone of your movement language. And the
wow,
more time you spend on the floor, the more you are forced to do exactly what I'm watching you do right now, which is move from this and then move into a squat and then move into a 90-90 and then sit crisscross applesauce. And you, throughout this hour that we'll talk, have probably traversed 100 different patterns as opposed to the one or two patterns that you might do if you are sitting or standing. That's why, like, I think the floor is like the OG teacher for movement, and getting back down on that can teach you so much about your body. And it's such a shame that so many people literally never go on the floor.
yeah,
Literally, they might turn a certain age and never go on the floor again, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, just with that frame in mind of the amount of opportunities we've got in a day to day to make movement beautiful, and other teachers like our environment or the floor or whatever it is. If somebody's listening to this and maybe they don't feel like their movement is beautiful, and now we've got the philosophical frame of it, let's say, that you can make it beautiful, what are the practical things to focus on? Are there specific movement patterns that you usually start with people? Are there specific problems that you're looking to solve globally? What would you say about that?
if somebody is looking to just improve their relationship with their body, and they care about their lifelong health, I'm thinking about somebody who's like a holistic person who's kind of bought in. This is somebody who's really paying attention to their diet, really paying attention to so many things, avoiding toxins. They're in it for the long haul and they're already committed. I would say for this person, reclaiming the floor and getting back to the floor is going to be the most bang for your buck, type of thing. And it's a very simple thing to do, and it can start something very basic like my family At dinner time, we sit on the floor to eat dinner as opposed to sitting in chairs at the dinner
Mm,
table. It can start with incremental changes. Or when we are watching TV, if we watch TV, we're no longer in the couch, everyone's on the floor, laying
yeah.
about, stretching, we're doing whatever. We're just laying on the floor. Get yourself a nice, comfy rug, type of thing. So that's more on the holistic person, someone that's like committed to the lifelong, like being their best self. Now I want to talk to somebody who's like, my body and I are not on a team, like Bam is
Yeah.
talking about. I kind of am living in chronic tension and chronic pain, and I guess I can go to the floor. The floor is kind of uncomfortable. I don't have the best mobility, and I just ultimately feel like I don't know how to operate my body, and my body is not really happy with me in the morning. For this person, the number one thing that we want to reclaim is ultimately your hips and the backside of your body. The reason for this is because the hips, the backside of our body, is the largest amount of mass on the human. We've got glutes, big lats, spinal erectors, huge back posterior delt shoulders. We've got hamstrings, calves, like the backside of our body. If you just kind of filleted somebody's backside, it's absolutely massive. And then if you look at the front side of the body, yes, we've got pecs, we've got the front of our shoulders, we've got hip flexors, we've got quads, front of your shins, not really anything going on. The amount of muscle tissue on the front of your body versus the back of your body, there's a huge difference. There's a way more mass on the backside of our body. What can we take from that information is that we are rear wheel driven beings. That from the backside of our body, we generate power to move forward because forward movement is the thing that humans are designed to do: walking,
Mm,
running, crawling, swimming, climbing. It's what our body is, what we do. Fish swim, birds fly, monkeys climb in the trees, lizards crawl on the ground, humans walk and run. And the way we do that is from the backside of our body and we move forward. However, most of our life, most people in the Western world don't have an opportunity to actually develop the backside of our body because immediately when we go 4, 5, 6 years old, we're placed in the chair for kindergarten. And then you go kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. That's already 9 years, 9 years, 4 more years of high school. And if you're in the US system, now we're on 13 years. And then you do 4 more years of college, you're at 17 years. So 17 years of your life in your development phases when you're supposed to be developing the backside of your body, your musculature to move you
mm,
forward, you're developing a musculature to sit in a chair, and that musculature is mostly on the front side of your body. When we're sitting in a chair, the hip flexors, the psoas, the front of our neck, the front of our pecs, the shoulders, all of these things that everyone chronically complains about being overly excessively tight. I've got tight hips. My low back is tight. The front of my
yeah.
shoulders, my necks are tight. These are all symptoms of living within the front of your body from a sedentary lifestyle
Yeah.
and your body not being able to self organize to the backside and living and moving from the backside, meaning your posture is rooted in the back of your body, meaning your movement originates and dominates from the backside of your body. This is absolutely huge. So if you're somebody who's disconnected from your body, you've got chronic tension, simply look at your body, look at your glute development, look at your hamstrings, look at your lats. And then there are movements that you can do to test this and say, like, do I actually have the structural strength to live and emanate myself, my life from the backside of my body?
Mm,
If you don't, we have to reclaim that. We absolutely have to reclaim your posterior chain, your back chain, as your life force, as the thing that you are driving from. We're going back to cars again. You've got a car. Most cars are rear wheel driven. They're not driven from the two front wheels. From the backside is how we generate more power, more stability. So you've got either you're from the backside or you're all four type of thing. Most humans right now in the Western world are living in the front side of their body, which is a slow crumbling into yourself.
yeah.
On the backside of your body is how we open up from the backside of our body. So we have to reclaim your posture, your strength. That entire movement happens from your hip hinge. To go to the backside, your hips move back and you hinge at the hips, which means your chest comes forward a little bit and you bend down and your hips move backwards. That one singular movement is the first step in reclaiming the backside of your body. Most people, when they hinge, it's not pretty. They know it
Yeah.
doesn't feel good, and that's when you reach down for your keys or you reach down for something and you go, "Ugh." It's really hard because you put yourself in a place where you don't know how to move from.
Mm,
Um, so we got to reclaim that backside of your body. That's going to be more of a technical reclamation of. I encourage people to use a coach, especially a natural coach or a primal movement coach, someone who understands how the backside is used on a natural setting, not in an unnatural setting like deadlifting. A lot of
right.
people will say like, "Well, posture your chain, so let me do a deadlift." Well, if you look at the deadlift, it's not a natural movement at all. Okay, the deadlift is not a natural movement. So if you develop your posterior chain with unnatural movements, you're going to have an unnatural posterior chain that's not going to work for you in the normal in your everyday life. We want your backside to be working for you outside of the gym 100% more tenfold than it does for you in the gym, which is going to always be basically unnatural movements
Mm,
because there is no exercise that is natural. Exercise does not exist in nature. If you go back to an indigenous culture and you started doing burpees or deadlifts or like pull-ups, they would look at you like you're crazy. Like you have
right.
psychological problems right now. Exercise is a supplement for what our life does not provide for us. And so by acknowledging that, we say, okay, I have to get something, but I'm just trying again to go back to my primal nature. Um, and I'm using these exercises to try and get there, as opposed to, oh, well, if I just take my vitamin D3 supplement, everything's going to be fine. That type of thinking is the same type of thinking. Well, if I just do a couple deadlifts and a couple barbell back squats, I'm going to be fine. And
Mm.
we're coming to the conclusion that both the vitamin D supplement and just simply doing deadlifts and back squats is completely missing the mark and not at all uh, giving us what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's a very good point because I think most people, even the people that exercise and enjoy exercise and maybe doing some of those movements, are doing it more so. There's other side quests, I guess. They want to look better, or the obsession right now with hip thrusts for girls to grow a big old booty and whatever. That's cool if that's your thing. But really, what we're trying to do is like feel good in our bodies, hopefully be able to do the things we love for the long haul, get up and down off the ground with our grandkids, those kinds of things. And that calling it out in a very healthy way, and I think you're dead on that there's exercise is not natural is a really probably triggering statement to some people because like what are you saying? It's a bad thing. But it's true. You're right. You're so right. You go back however long you need to go back and you see your ancestors doing push-ups and squat and every minute on the minute exercises, you'd be like, what the heck is going on? Because movement was so inbuilt into their life, right? Like they were climbing trees to get the honey, they were hunting, they were just exercising, but they had no concept for that. It was just movement. And I think that's really, really important. So when you say this reclamation of the backside, the posterior chain, which is a really cool concept. I knew as an athlete that so much of your power is generated from everything behind you, but I hadn't thought about the interest in parallel, like life is moved in forward motion for humans, like a lot of walking and running, which is driven by the kind of rear wheel drive back engine here. So what can you see in people quite quickly that would indicate that that is not functioning? Are you looking at the way that they stand, walk, move? Like what's some telltale signs that somebody might be disconnected from the posterior chain?
That's a great question because I'm sure that people listening are asking that for themselves. Like, am I a forward living person or am I living from the backside? From a movement perspective, you could simply go on an uphill hike or run uphill or go on a stairmaster machine in the gym. Do that pretty aggressively until you get some muscle fatigue. And then ask yourself, which of my muscles are being fatigued the most? If you're a front chain living person, your quads are going to feel really tired
Mm,
and big. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so sore in my legs, but the front of your legs, your quads, the front of your thighs. If you're someone who's rear wheel driven, you're going to feel your glutes primarily. My glutes, my hips, my big glute muscles are really being used right now when I hike uphill, when I walk uphill, when I run. And then the uphill is like a good challenge because it'll get you that muscle fatigue. But then the next layer is okay, when I go on a run on flat level or when I walk, what are the muscles that I use mostly when I walk? Do I feel the front of my hips, my hip flexors, and my quads being used mostly? Or do I feel my glutes and my hamstrings? So that's from like a tactile sensation that somebody can ask themselves that will give you an indication on what your default muscular chain that's kind of being used to propel you forward. If you're looking at yourself from the side, now we're talking about just posture. If you're looking at yourself from the side, maybe I can stand up so people can actually like see this. We're looking at the relationship between your ankle bone and then the side of your hip where your femur goes into your hip, and which is going to be along the seam of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
So this hip bone and this ankle bone on the ground. If my hip bone is in front of my ankles, this is somebody who's in the front side of their body. Where the hip bone is on top of the ankle, stacked, or a little bit behind, this is somebody who's going to be living in their rear world. So all you have to do is stand to the side, have someone take a picture, or when you're outside in the in a community setting or something, just look at pictures of yourself naturally as you're standing
Mm.
at the grocery store, and just ask yourself, where's my hips in relationship to my ankles? Um, Most people fall under or have been told, like, I want it directly over. Directly over is like ground zero. If you, we actually want you a little bit behind, your hips just a little bit back. That's where we want you to be living. If you think about children, or I imagine your kids, 1 in 5, they're still in this way. They're probably standing like this,
Mm-hmm.
walking around
Yeah.
like this. They got the baby body still. They're not with their hips forward. So if you think about the baby body, we want to reclaim that baby body. Your hips are kind of back, your chest is forward,
Yeah.
and we're moving along the world in those ways. So when I'm assessing my clients or people, I look at the relationship between the hips and the ankle and to see that. And ultimately, this is a relationship of how your body relates to gravity. Where are you when gravity comes down? How do you show up? And a good example of this is there are two types of individuals. If I'm walking and there's like a ledge, when somebody is walking and they realize, wow, if I take another step, I'm going to fall over, there's only two responses that you can have. Your hips move forward and your arms move back. Whoa, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. Or your hips move back and your arms move forward. I'll demonstrate that right
Yeah.
now. And people can just try this. You can just imagine. If I'm walking and there's a ledge, I can go, whoa, 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 whoa. I can do this one.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can see the ledge and I go, whoa, 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 whoa. This one. Whichever one is your default mode that switches on in your life saving setting, that's how your body feels the safest to organize yourself in
Mm.
time and space in relationship with gravity to keep you balanced and upright. We want you to be the hips back person
Yeah.
always.
That's really cool, man. That's a cool demonstration as well. I'm curious. I want to go outside and test that now because I'd like to think of myself as a hips back kind of person, but you never know, right? Until you run the experiment, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
you never know. I wonder. I don't know if we can actually do like a control. There's got to be a way. I would love to find a way where we can do a controlled study to see like what happens.
I'm gonna tell my wife, like, at some point in the next 24 hours, you just gotta run up behind me and push me.
Yeah,
And you'll
that's
see
yeah.
how I react in that moment.
Yeah. And if the hips really move forward, and it really, I think, all comes down to your nervous system, says
Right.
if we push ourselves into this place with our hips forward and our arms back, we have the biggest chance of staying upright and not falling over.
Yeah.
Or my hips are back, hands on the floor. People who have a really hard time touching their toes, they're going to be a hips forward person.
Yep.
Somebody that can easily touch their toes and put their hands on the floor, they're going to be a hips back person. Because when I throw my hips back, I not only do I get more space, there's more space for me to pull my hips back, but then my hands are closer to the floor, so I can go easily from 2 points of contact to four,
Mm.
which is a huge advantage for balance. This is something I learned with like wrestling. The
Mm.
best thing you can do as a wrestler is learn how to pull your hips back and utilize the floor for balance. Like
Yep.
you're very well, it's very hard for you to put off balance if you're living here as opposed to on two with your hips forward. Anyone who's upright, if you ever see anyone wrestling who's like upright, you know in a few seconds they're going to be on their back.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it kind of segues really nicely into where I wanted to talk to you today about the importance of crawling, and that pattern would put you, like you said, if you needed to, 4 points of contact on the ground. So I've been a fan of crawling as a movement modality for quite a while. I've done a few different certifications, one of them being animal flow. It's a whole ground based movement. You might be familiar, and definitely some of the crossover with what you teach with primal movements as well. I'm always interested when I demo this to people or show them, even relatively quote unquote good athletes or people that come to retreats and things like that. They have a really hard time with the patterning of getting the body to move in a way that is what feels to me like really natural and really intuitive. What's your take on crawling and the importance of it from our kind of development, not only as kids into adults, but also like keeping and honing that skill as adults? Why is
Right.
crawling so beneficial?
Well, crawling is the foundational pattern of forward movement. Walking and running is simply the same pattern of crawling, but we're just upright.
Yeah.
And so crawling is where we develop this cross body right and left coordination where when my right arm reaches, my left arm goes forward.
Yeah.
What that happens too is not only is my both of my cross my extremities, my right arm and my left arm are working together, which means my brain is kind of doing like an X type of thing. So my opposite extremities are working. If you go into the gym, most of the time it's always a right and right or a left and left, or both my
Mm,
arms and my legs are doing the same thing. So we don't get this cross body type of work that is in all locomotion, swimming, crawling, climbing. You get this cross body thing where the right and the left brain have to coordinate themselves to make one singular movement. Not only do I have my extremities that are across my body working together, but then I have my general trunk or my shoulders and my hips that are doing counter rotation.
yeah.
This counter rotational movement that allows me to go forward. Again, is something that is very rarely seen in traditional exercises, where traditional exercises are talking about trunk stability and bracing your core and
Right.
reducing the amount of your ability of your upper body and your lower body to do the opposite, to really do the opposite. So, crawling to me is absolutely crucial and foundational to our ability to walk and run. And as a movement coach, walking and running is the number one thing that I'm looking at when I'm assessing somebody. It's also the number one thing that I'm trying to nurture and protect in a human. Because if I
Mm,
can help somebody, empower them to reclaim their ability to walk and run, then I am assuming, I'm guessing, I'm hoping with all of me that their ability to move forward is just extended a little bit longer.
yeah.
The moment that you cannot walk, the moment you cannot run, you're just a little bit closer to death. The people that can walk repeatedly, and I go up in the morning and I have a nice walk, these are people that are going to keep their health, their longevity for a long
Mm,
time, especially as you go into an older age. And so crawling is absolutely fundamental for for our ability to understand how to coordinate our body to do the most difficult movement of all, which is bipedal walking.
mm,
This is also something that's like hard for people to understand, but is really fun to bring people to this macro that bipedal walking, or just walking on your two legs, which is what humans do, is one of the most technical movements that we see in the animal kingdom. And it's so technical that we are basically the only mammal that's doing it. Every other mammal that's doing it, maybe it's a little clunky. They don't do it as good as us. We are professional
mm,
walkers. We are professional locomotors. We are so good at it, and our body is designed to do this. And it's extremely technical. It takes us about a year, year and a half, 2 years to really get into our walking pattern, to develop into it. Most people think about walking as they think of like almost like low grade exercise. So, like, oh,
yeah.
I can't do exercise. I can't go do my training or do this. I guess I'll just go on a walk. But really what you're saying is, I guess I'm just gonna go on a walk, is I guess I'm gonna express the most technical,
Mm,
miraculous movement that I can do right now. And we know that it's technical and miraculous because if you saw a cow walking on 2 legs, everyone would be dumbfounded. Everyone would be like, "Oh my goodness, this cow is walking on 2 legs," or a horse or a dog or anything that walks on 2 legs. That's why this archetype of an alien that comes down from outer space and is walking on 2 feet gives us goosebumps. It's like, "Oh, it's like us." It
mm,
has this sacred ability that we've been given to walk on 2 feet, which is like there's something inherently we know that we have been given the ultimate lottery ticket as human animals to have this ability to walk. And it takes us a while to develop this. And so going back to the crawling, If we look at the development of children, of babies, we start on our backs. The first locomotion movement that we have to do is learn how to go from our backs to our stomachs. And this is something that we have to learn by ourselves, for ourselves, through ourselves. None of our parents or anyone can teach us how to actually coordinate ourselves so that we can roll onto our
Hmm.
stomach. It's something that with our own body and our sensations and our instincts, we have to teach ourselves. So it's a completely self-taught movement. But the simple act of rolling over onto your stomach is done when the shoulders and the hips disassociate from themselves and allow you to flop over.
Mm.
If your hips and your shoulders do the same thing, you're like a piece of cardboard. It's too much weight. You can't create that rotational capacity to actually go onto your stomach. So that's when the first locomotion happens is when we learn how to go from our stomach to our back and forth and vice versa. And that happens when we learn to disassociate our top half and our lower half.
Mm.
Once we disassociate from our top half and our low half, we have this, okay, now we have this rotational component. Then I've got my extremities that I learned that can do the opposites. And that's when babies are on all fours and they start crawling. So they start to use this rotational capacity and these opposite extremities doing this motion, which creates the forward locomotion of a crawl. And so we develop that pattern over and over and over and over again with just a ton of crawling repetitions as we're younger until this crazy disassociated rotation and these opposite extremities coordinating with each other, it gets strong enough in the backside. Again, on all
Hmm.
fours and crawling is when we develop the backside of our body. Eventually, you get so strong and you start to learn how to stand up and you do the exact same thing. You do the exact same thing, the disassociated opposite rotational capacity of the top and the low, and the opposite extremities working to coordinate a balancing effect so you can move forward. If you don't have the opportunity to crawl for a while, your ability to walk, the quality is just a little bit less.
Mm.
Maybe you can walk, but it's not at the highest quality potential that it can be. And so I love that you like crawling, and I invite all people to go back into crawling, go back into rawing the development sequence of that we did when we were younger, so that when you go finally back up to the most technical thing, which is walking or running, that quality has just a little bit more capacity within it. And we get that
Yeah.
capacity from crawling. So crawling is like absolutely fundamental to this. Recently, the CDC removed it from the developmental milestones of
I saw that.
children, and uh, it really made me sad when I saw that, because I think for adults who have families who have children to know that crawling is fundamental to the development of our youth and their athletic capacity and their ability to walk and run, we need to protect it. We need to encourage it, which means
Yeah.
I need to go to the ground with my kids. I need to make sure that they're not on tile and wood floor only, and it's uncomfortable for them. They have grass, they have nice rugs, they have dirt outside, they have sand at the beach, someplace that is a safe environment where they feel comfortable to express their crawling again and again and again and again, and keep them, encourage them to go back to the ground. Not this, I need to stand my kid up as soon as possible
Yeah.
because look at my kid at this age, look at how quickly they're walking. Well, what you're doing is you're removing the time and the repetitions that they spend learning this absolutely crucial, like that's why crawling is so difficult. When you ask human or adults to go back into the crawl, you see their lack of that understanding because
Yeah.
they have been so far removed from that crawling. They only had a little bit of period. The next thing you know, they're up, standing, walking, and doing bilateral movements like squats, presses, whatever, and they're moving their brain further away neurologically from the crawling pattern. So when they do go crawl, it's like it looks like a whole hot mess. So
Yeah.
protecting that for our children and then reestablishing that, like increasing that quality in adults is really, really, really important to protecting our ability to move forward.
So good, man. Yeah, I love this as well because just being in the the throes of fatherhood as well, and actually being a bit of a movement nerd, like watching your kids develop these things is really cool. But like you said, there's an open invitation as an active parent that can actually relearn these patterns by the virtue of like just putting yourself back on the ground with your kids and
Yeah.
patterning that for them as well. Because as much as your kids, especially when they're super young, they're not listening to what you say, they're watching what you do and they're mimicking what you do. And there's a lot of mimicry, and I've tried to prioritize that as much as I could, especially in these very formative years of like lots of play, lots of wrestling, lots of crawling, lots of that stuff. And crawling for me is something that I put in the almost every single time I'm going to work out. It's in the warm up, at least. Sometimes crawling is the workout itself, or it will be one of the components of the workout, right? Crawl
Mhm.
for a certain amount of time or crawl in a certain kind of way, which brings me into the workout realm. And I'd like to spend a few minutes here before we wrap up, before we figure out what Coach Bam does for his workouts and how you leverage more of this natural kind of philosophy of movement into wanting to stay fit and move well for good. I also am very curious as to how this influences your views on some of the conventional training models. I saw you taking some heat online the other day because you attacked the sacred cow of the gym bros, which is the barbell. You know, the barbell is whatever you want to say. So I'm curious why Coach Bam hates the barbell.
More so, I hate the philosophy around the barbell that has been established. As in, if you want to get strong, simply squat, bench, and deadlift, and get good
Right.
at these things. Mostly, I very much dislike that philosophy when I think about younger Bam, when I think about our teenagers, when I think about our young athletes who are looking to develop themselves athletically, who are looking to develop themselves in their strength capacity. And when they go looking for that, the answer that they're given is bench, squat, and deadlift. And if you can, whatever it is, bench your uh, 1.5 times your body weight, and then if you can squat 2 times your body weight, and then you can deadlift 2.5 times your body weight, then you are the strongest, you are the most athletic, and you're good to go. And so all you got to do is get these three numbers in order, develop yourself, and then you're going to be good. And that to me is a very bad path to set a young athlete down, that is setting them up for failure of true strength. It is not like you will be able to express strength through a barbell. You will not be able to express a bunch of strength when you're climbing a hill or
Mm,
when you're wrestling with somebody, or in terms of strength as being, if you just define strength as your resilience capacity, your ability to avoid injuries. Going down the barbell path will lead you to be exposed to more injuries and compromise your joints. Why is that? Is it because it's the farthest thing from the crawling pattern? The human body is designed to walk, to crawl, and to run. That's what our body is actually structurally built to do. Our human body is not designed to bilaterally or with both extremities press, pull things, and our spine to be straight.
mm,
If our spine was designed to be straight, it wouldn't be set up in joints. It would just be one rod type of thing. But in order to do the barbell lifts correctly, and this is coming from somebody who was a competitive Olympic weightlifter, I'm very familiar with how to utilize the barbell to express strength, like very familiar with the technical abilities of it. In order to do the barbell movements correctly, instead of going from our spiral connective tissue or the outside lines of tension, we go to an abdominal brace system to lift things. As soon as you go into an abdominal brace system, you cannot do this counter rotation that we talked about with crawling and walking and running. That is absolutely fundamental. So you immediately create the top half and the low half to be doing one solid structure.
mm,
And then with both extremities, you're either pressing or pulling or doing something where your right and your lefts, either your legs or your hands, are doing the same exact thing. In crawling and in walking and running, it's the exact opposite. The spine is bending and rotating and moving. The extremities are doing opposite of each other. And we're not bracing at the core, we're stabilizing ourselves with like our lateral spiral lines and the backside lines, not through a bracing. So it's a very different structure or movement pattern that we need to get into for our crawling and walking than it is to with lifting.
mm,
So when lifting becomes your primary mode or medium for which you are trying to express strength, you are directly going against the natural makeup of the human body. And this is why when you look at powerlifters, you look at people who have been lifting with the barbell for a long time, watch them run, watch them play sports, and look at the longevity of their physical body. You're not going to see powerlifters beyond the age of 40 and 50 who are moving really well or even still powerlifting.
Right.
There's only a certain amount of time that you have to express, let's say, powerlifting strength. That powerlifting strength is a hobby. It is a sport. It is something that you can do, just like with surfing, just like with mixed martial arts. These are things that you do because you're human, your ego, your identity wants to express itself through that, which is beautiful and great. The problem that I have with the philosophy of the barbell is people saying that this is healthy for you and will give you the strength that actually people are looking for, which is longevity, which is
Hmm.
athleticism, which is all these other things. It's a bunch of garbage.
Mm.
As long as we acknowledge that this is just something I want to do for fun, for hobby, for personal development, this is when it's okay. But it's when it's blanketed as, hey, you want to get strong, or I see physical therapists, chiropractors, different people prescribing these movements to help somebody reclaim their natural strength. That's where I have a big problem with it because they have no understanding of what natural strength actually is. They just understand, well, if you can do these, express these numbers on a barbell, then studies might show that you might be able to express natural strength.
Right.
It's a completely correlated, like bad science, very bad science type of outcome. But like for me, I love martial arts. There's nothing in me that says when I step into a cage with another person and we're going to go toe to toe and fight, that it's going to be healthy for my physical joints and body.
Yeah.
It's healthy for my soul. It's healthy for my mind. It's healthy for my emotions. It's healthy for me to develop myself personally, but I know that there's a cost.
Yeah.
Same with surfing. There is a cost to surfing. When I fall off a big wave and that thing like tumbles and thrashes me over, I'm not saying like this is such a healthy thing for my body. No, I'm putting myself in the arena of life and I'm challenging myself. And if my initial structure and alignment is not prepared to handle that, that's when I'm going to get injured. And so
Yeah.
barbell lifting and powerlifting is going into the arena, is trying to express something that is external to our natural uh, strength, our natural kind of performance. It's just when we start to believe that that is a natural and good thing, and there is no drawbacks to it. There's a ton of drawbacks, and the most basic one is it will take you further away from your crawling pattern,
Hmm.
from your walking ability, and walking. When you start to lose the ability to walk, that's when death comes knocking at your door.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. I think that's a it's a really good take because you said like if you just acknowledge you're doing this for either the sport or the enjoyment or a good old stroke of the ego, that's okay
Yeah,
as long as we don't lie to ourselves. But to say that this is the only way to get strong is a bit of a misnomer. It's strength in a very specific kind of way, but it's not holistic strength. And it's been funny to me because I actually was an MMA and jiu-jitsu athlete back in the day. I even competed. And similarly to you, under no illusions is that the healthiest thing you can do for your body. It's more of the mental and spiritual and, kind of learn about yourself because man in the arena kind of thing, nothing will put the pressure on self-development quite like something like that. And more recently, just by virtue of moving to Cookeville, Tennessee, I found myself next to the arguably the most famous CrossFit gym in the world. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get stuck into some CrossFit. Now I'm coming from more of a background where I've done more of the movement, natural stuff. And now I'm actually reverse engineering, trying to learn things like Olympic lifting. And it's really interesting because when things come up in the workout that are a little more organic and unilateral, so like if we've got like a sled pull where there's a lot of rotation or rope climbs, that like I love that stuff. And where it's a little bit more strict and linear and all about this abdominal brace in the Olympic lifts and things like that, that's my new learning curve. And
yeah,
again, I'm under no illusion that this is the healthiest thing for me. It's just there's another branch I'm hanging on my movement language of trying this now. But I think what you're saying is cool for me to hear and see because that foundation that I had of a more holistic view of strength, the ability to crawl, the ability to put myself in interesting positions and control those positions is
yeah.
actually helping me play catch up quite quickly, I feel, relatively speaking. So the foundations first thing is really, really important. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, like how you bring all of this into your own daily movement practice or exercise. Like how does Bam think about that? Is it more natural and organic for you? Do you actually have training days? What kind of tools do you
Yeah.
usually lean on if you're staying away from barbells? You know, your kettlebells. I've seen you rope climbing and parkouring and things like that. Why don't you try and take us through just kind of your own personal movement philosophy and what you apply to, obviously just stroke the ego sometimes as well and look good, feel good, and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Um, okay, I'm going to try and answer this question and bring in two a philosophy and then a practicality, because the philosophy, the theory part of it is really really important for somebody like, I'm sure there's some listeners that do enjoy CrossFit or lifting or those things. And the philosophy is that, like you said, I know my natural base strength alignment, my natural model of movement. The model of movement, my primal way that I as a human being am supposed to walk, supposed to crawl, supposed to reach down and grab something, supposed to squat, supposed to be able to like go to the floor and rest. That needs to be established first and primarily. And in a natural life, that would be established in our very early development years as a youth. Most of us, that was completely taken away from us. And so as adults, we have to go back into that and reclaim that natural model of movement, which is you and your body know what is baseline. Baseline for me is I can go and do a little bit of a squat. Maybe my heels are up or my heels are down, but I have the ability to squat and rest, which is how the human goes to the bathroom in a natural sense. I have the ability to touch the ground with my hands with straight legs. That's easy for me. It's not strainful. I have the length of the backside of my body in order to touch the ground so I can garden, so I can harvest, so I can pick up my kids, so I can, if I drop my keys or if I'm playing golf and I'm picking up a ball, I'm not going to hurt myself. I know how to walk. I know how to hold good alignment and posture within my body. This model of how you're supposed to move in your natural sense outside of the gym needs to be established. And if you don't have that, you need to establish it. That way, when you go and play in the arena, like you are doing, I'm gonna go do CrossFit. I'm gonna go do learn something that's completely unnatural, like grabbing a tiny steel pole and throwing it over my head multiple times. Okay, you're going to go do that. And then when something bad happens, like your shoulder hurts or your low back starts talking to you, you say, okay, well, yeah, I was going and doing this really extreme, intense thing. So all I need to do is regress or retreat back to my primal natural baseline strength. Because this primal natural baseline strength is my home base, is safety, is actual true resiliency. You have a place to come back to. The problem with today is that you'll have CrossFit athletes, MMA athletes who are really good at these technical, unnatural abilities, and they have no idea what their natural baseline is. Their natural baseline is I can squat 225, I can bench
Yeah.
this amount, I can
Right.
go and do this amount of jujitsu, or I can run this fast. That's not a baseline. That's a technical, specific quality that you have developed. We are talking about the base ability of your human body, like an animal. Like it's very easy for us to see if we put a fish in a pond and that fish can't swim, you'd be like, that's a problem. You wouldn't tell that fish, hey, let's get on this barbell machine and get you stronger. You would say, no, you need to learn how to swim, fish, because if you can't do that, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So we need to establish that baseline first and foremost. The way that we establish this, and this is the answer to the question, is through the daily practice of making sure that we're taking care of that baseline. Just like we take care of brushing our teeth, just like we take care of cleaning our body and taking a shower, which means in the morning time, you start your day with a 30, 15, 20 to 30 minute, let's say, intentional movement practice to make sure that your primal movement, your natural movement strength, is not only there for you, but you're just giving it a couple of reps, just a
Yeah.
couple of drops in that bucket. And so that looks like waking up, going to the ground, and doing the actual development sequence that you did as you were a child in that 20-minute thing, which means you're lying down on your back or your stomach. You're doing some of that. Maybe you're doing some rolling. Then you're
Mm.
on all fours, doing some rockers or doing some stretches on an all four position, maybe some crawling. And then you're working from a half kneeling position, maybe doing some stretches or doing some like standing up. Then you're doing some single leg work, some strengthening your single legs, how you balance on a single leg, which is locomotion. Then you're practicing your basic mobility, your squatting and your hinging.
Mhm.
Then you go on a little bit of a walk and you're good to go. Rinse, wash, and repeat the natural development cycle that you did when you're a kid, and you just go into a little baby cycle in the morning. If you go into that little baby cycle in the morning and then you squat, let's say when you're squatting, and you're like, oh, my knee hurts, you know that you are operating for the rest of your day beneath the baseline standard, and I
Mm.
need to watch out. If I do a little baby squat with just my body weight and my knee hurts or something is clicking in my hips, that's a huge signal from me to my body that says I should probably not go to the CrossFit gym and load
Yeah.
this movement right now because my
Yeah.
base movement is not established. So the morning movement practice is absolutely huge, and you see this in a lot of Eastern cultures where people wake up and they do these natural movements. And it's almost like your checklist of like checking in and
Yeah.
saying, are we good to go? You're bringing the car into the garage and you're just checking everything. Is the oil good? We got gas. Is all the tires aligned? Is everything good? Before we go race, which is your hobbies, your day, you're going out into the arena, you're making sure that everything is set and good to go. If you do that on a daily basis, then what you're going to be given is all the keys to the castle. Your body's going to say has so much trust that when you say, I want to go do a crazy CrossFit workout, or I want to go surf today, or I want to do jujitsu, or I want to do whatever it is that you want to do, you want to build something, you're doing some manual labor, you're going to be going into those places, into those arenas with a strong kind of foundation. So that's that second point. Bam, in the morning, little baby movement practice. And then after that, I'm like, I want to go play. What
Yeah.
do I want to do today? Jiu-jitsu, surfing, whatever it is. And you go out into the arena of your life, whatever it is that your spirit and your soul says, this is how I want to develop. And you get a ton of information. You either get some really good information, like I can improve technically in these ways in surfing or in jiu-jitsu or in CrossFit, like, and I'm excited to learn these new technical movements, or you get slapped a little bit and it's like my low back is hurting, my shoulders hurting, my whatever's hurting. That will inform what you need to do tomorrow or even
Right.
that better yet that day as to there's something I don't understand about my shoulder in this movement that when I go into the arena, I don't have it. This is the
Hmm.
same mentality that martial artists will do. You go into the gym and you train movements, then you go into a fight. You go into a fight and somebody chokes you out. You're like, why did I get choked out? What holes do I have in my capacity that allowed that to happen? And so after the fight, you go back into the gym and you refine it, you refine it, you refine it. Um, which is the opposite of there is a movement practice which is healing and regenerating is what I'm talking about in the morning. And then you have your arena practice, your training. The arena and the training and the testing of your body should break you down and test your limitations. Most people know how to do this. When you go into a CrossFit gym, you are not healing and regenerating your body. You are testing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with fighting, same with so many of these things. You're really putting yourself out there and you're breaking yourself down. When you break yourself down, you equally need a regenerative movement practice to heal yourself up.
Yeah.
Yoga doesn't really cut it, by the way, but it is on the same, it's on the right path. It's very much on the right path. But we need to have both a regenerative practice and then a breakdown practice. So then after your hobby, you do whatever during your day to express yourself and to train and to break yourself down and test your limitations. Then in the evening, we want to have a decompressing, a resting, where we help our nervous system, we help our body regain the length, regain a stable nervous system, and just to ease ourselves out. The easiest thing that you can do in the evening for your regenerative decompression practice is just lay on the ground, be on your back, be on your stomach, do some basic stretching. It could be 10, 15, 20 minutes. And these two caps of your day in the morning
Mm.
and then in the evening are like your little time where you and your body just get to sit down and like have a really cool conversation with each other. And you listen with intention and your body says, "Hey, we got something going on with our left hip today because you were on a plane for 4 hours yesterday. Can you help me out with this left hip? You were
Mm.
sitting like an idiot. Can you?" And you're like, "Oh, no problem. Let me go into a pigeon stretch or let me do some like single leg movements to get myself back to baseline." And so you kind of cap your day in the morning and the evening with these two regenerative practices. That way, during the day, you get the keys of the castle to go play and go express yourself in some very wild and unnatural ways, which is, I think, the best. Like,
Yeah.
go do handstands, go surf, go do MMA, go do a CrossFit class. But those things are like, they're not the natural thing. That's just, we get to live in a time right now where we get to have the freedom to go do these things. And so, what a privilege it is to go into those places, but just acknowledging that those environments, you have to earn them. You don't get to just walk into a
Yeah.
CrossFit gym and just do it. You don't just get to go walk into an MMA and gym and just do it. There's a cost to those things, and if you want to pay the price, you have to really build yourself up. So when that price comes in, you can pay it no problem. You don't pay it at the expense of your joints or your connective tissue or your life, which is what a lot of people do in CrossFit. You see them all taped up.
Oh yeah,
Their
dude.
bodies are breaking down, but they're like, "Hey, we're still doing this thing."
Still doing it. Yeah, man. It's a really refreshing and holistic and radical perspective. I love it. It almost feels full circle of kind of where we started the conversation and where we're closing it, which is actually kind of why primal, and you reflected like trying to square the circle between lost wisdom and the natural versus the modern. And now we're ending it with take care of the natural and the organic and then do the modern crazy shit that we do. And that's the polarity of life, right? That's the two sides of the coin, and I think that's a really cool way to start to bring this one into land. So I appreciate all your wisdom and insights, Bam. It's been really cool for me. I feel like we could talk for hours and probably need to sync up and go move together too, but
Yeah.
before we do that, we gotta get in the same location. So why don't you tell our listeners where they can go and keep up with what you're up to and any offerings that you have and anything like that? Where do you want to point them?
Yeah, if you're interested in learning about primal movement and reestablishing your natural strength, go to www.primalmovement.org, and you can purchase the Primal Movement program. And this Primal Movement program will give you the language to be able to speak to your body and establish that morning and evening practice so that you can go and play. If you want to know more or dive into practice, that's where I would say go to the primalmovement.org and get into that program. If you want to find me on YouTube for some free stuff or some more philosophical things, just type in Primal Movement on YouTube at Primal Movement and you'll find me. And then on Instagram, if you've got questions, this is a good place to reach out for a DM at Bam Lionheart, BamLionHeart. Send me a DM if you want to talk, if you have questions about integrating natural movement, primal movement into your life.
Cheers, brother. Very fun conversation. You lot, we will see you next week. Go crawl, go lie on the floor, go have a conversation with your body. Bam. Thank you, my friend, and stay radical. Peace. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.